Hi everybody, I am here to paint with you again. We're going to be doing our background with a lovely little Dreamcatcher. It's a first for me, so we'll kind of see how it goes. This painting lends itself a lot to your creativity, so it will allow for you to paint it however makes you happy. Use the colors that you would like. The technique is going to be very similar throughout. So let's get started and see how it goes. Our friend Daryl is on standby today helping out with your comments since I really cannot see the screen. So if you have any questions, be patient. There is a 15-second delay or so from when I'm actually talking to when you actually get to hear me. But I'm so happy that you're here, and I'm going to get started now. There's actually a few more moving parts today in our equipment than we usually have. So just bear with me a minute. I'm trying to get everything situated the way that it needs to be. And I apologize for the lighting. There's not a whole lot that I can do about it, or at least not today, I don't think. What we'll do, here, let's try moving our overhead lighting to the other side. That might help. Make that slightly better. There we go. This is another detail that we will work on in the future. Here we go. All right, so let's just try and work. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to start working on our background. Our background is going to have as many or as little colors as you want. Like I said, this particular project really does lend itself to your creativity, and you can do a lot or as little as you want. You can make it as colorful or as plain as you feel like. It's super versatile. And I think I prefer the idea of a mixed color. So I'm going to start by taking some blue. And this is just plain old primary blue. And we've talked about this before. Blues and reds and blacks are very pigmented colors, so you don't need a whole lot of them to achieve what you're looking for. So I always recommend start with a little and add what you need as you go. Acrylic paint isn't very expensive, but it's also not totally cheap. And I did find, especially during the beginnings of COVID-19, that it was not readily available in a lot of stores. Hi Mama, it's nice to see you. I hope you're surviving the heat out there. It is rather pleasant here, but I know that it's been really hot down there. So just bear with me 1 second. We're having one little technical difficulty.
Not the right one. There it is. Okay, now I'm in the right one.
Bear with me 1 second. We're having one little technical difficulty. Just one second, Daryl. I'm having a technical difficulty that I've got to work out.
There it is. Okay, now I'm in the right one.
Just one second, Daryl. I'm having a technical difficulty that I've got to work out. All right, I think that might be working better. Hi, Allison. It's nice to see you too. Give my best to Margaret. I miss both of you. So we're going to start out by just as we do, we wet our brush just to get
Hi, Allison. It's nice to see you too.
the bristles.
Give my best to Margaret. I miss both of you.
Let's see here.
We're going to start out by just as we do.
Another technical difficulty.
Hi, Allison. It's nice to see you too.
There we go. So we're gonna wet our bristles just to get the bristles nice and pliable. Hi, Andy. Love you a bunch. Hope you're doing okay. And I'm going to make myself a little pile of blue that's a little bit lighter than just the primary blue. And I'm going to start working one section of the canvas on kind of a diagonal. And I don't really want those colors to be fully blended. I want a little bit of streakiness, so I'm just kind of dotting. Oh, this light is really terrible. Probably because I'm blocking it. There we go. I promise you that I will work out the lighting and everything out before I stream next. And I'm just gonna kind of give this kind of like a rough start. And the reason that I'm choosing to do it this way is because I would like, I want to eventually for the paints to meet in the middle and make a nice purple. But I like to make sure that it looks cohesive, so you want to make sure that it makes sense that these colors are meeting in the middle. So if you just start off with kind of like a rough coverage, you'll see what I mean with when we move forward with the streaking of the pink and the red. Our general rule of thumb is to paint all the way around the side of your canvas so that you can display it without a frame in your home. Yeah, you can't see me, Mom, because I'm not facing the camera. I'm using a camera tripod that allows me to focus more on the canvas. But we're still working out some bugs, so you'll see very little of the actual me, but I'm here and you can probably hear me, I hope. So now that I've got that going, I am going to clean off my brush just enough. Let's see. There we go. And I'm going to take another bit of that white and some of that red and start mixing some pink. And I want a nice lightish pink, but I don't want it to be like baby pink. So you gotta be kind of careful with how that mixes. And we're going to do the same thing, only on the opposite side. And again, just kind of a rough coverage to start off with. Make sure we get some of that streakiness in there. Raise the canvas so that we can get the bottom of it. I've seen lots of people do lots of neat stuff with the edges of their canvas. I've seen people tape them off around the edge so that they have a very nice and neat, clean border around the edge of their painting. And that's all just kind of up to how much time you want to invest in preparing your canvas. As you can tell, I don't have a whole lot of time to spare these days, so I just do what I can with what I got, and this has actually been my favorite method anyway. But you can outline the edges of your canvas with some painter's tape, and that'll keep the paint off of your canvas and leave you a nice clean edge around your painting. So now that I've got that part worked out, I'm actually going to take a little touch of red and I'm going to mix it into that blue I made earlier. And it's just kind of a rough mix. I'll show you my palette here. We want, we want a blend of colors, not really one solid. Because it really does look a whole lot nicer when you've got those lovely streaks of pink and purple and blue working together. And then you can just kind of overlap your colors, your blue and your pink, and they will blend into a nice cohesive harmony. It'll look a little bit more like a sky that can't make up its mind, whether it's on sunset or sunrise. But because we don't have any yellow in here, it's not going to turn brown on you. So you can mix the colors. In the end, if you just keep going and you just keep blending and blending and blending, you're going to wind up with lavender, which is fine if you like lavender. There's some people who really detest lavender, but what I'm looking for is a nice blend. Oop. See, this is what happens when your paint dries. You get little paint boogers. So we've got kind of a nice little start there with the edges coming together. can start taking some straight red or some straight blue and streak it down. Just to kind of muddle it all. Paint boogers are a thing, Betsy. They're almost as bad as the boogers that we deal with at the school. As you can see, we don't have any one real color going on. We've got pink and blue and red and purple, and it's all just kind of coming together, you know, but there's no, like if you run out of color and you have to mix more, even if it's not just exactly the right shade that you had before, it's okay, because it all belongs. I have a painting buddy today trying to work his way onto the video. He might make it in. You want to say hi? Here, come here. If you're going to bother me, you might as well come by and say hi. Reggie is all growing up. And he has decided that my painting is fascinating and he needed to paw at my lap until I let him see what I was doing. Say hi, Reggie. See? Say hi. Can I get back to my painting now? Go on. Yes, indeed, the Duke. His Dukeness is enjoying the emptiness of my workroom right now, because that means he's got places to explore that he didn't have up until yesterday. Got some changes coming into this room that we had to prepare for, so we've got lots of empty spaces right now for him to play in, so he's been spending a lot of time in the art studio. And we are almost finished with this, I have to say, rather pretty background. I'm rather liking it quite a lot. I like that all of the colors are muddled and we've got a really, really dreamy starting point for our Dreamcatcher. I saw some examples of Dreamcatchers being painted with a similar tutorial to this one, and some people used darker shades of red and blue and purple and made a very spacey sky with stars and everything, with a lighter, with a white Dreamcatcher with white feathers all over it. And I have to say, it looks very challenging, but it also looks very pretty. It might be something I'll try here in the future. Now my bristles are getting a little bit dry, so my paint is starting to drag off of the canvas. So when that starts happening, if you start feeling that the paintbrush is pulling against the canvas, that means it's time to re-moisturize your bristles with a little bit of water. Not a ton, because that water does run into your paint, and it will change the molecular structure of the paint a bit.
Everything. Well, it's Star Wars stuff.
Oop, we are just dropping everything today. So in an effort to try and get myself in a better situation to stream, I got myself some new equipment that I swear I tried it out yesterday just to make sure that it was going to work, and apparently I've still got some stuff that I'll need to work out in the next few days. Now another thing to do when you start feeling that paint, your brush dragging on the paint a little, one of the things that you can also do is just leave it alone, leave the painting alone for a couple of minutes, and let some of the paint dry so that you can get less purchase off of it when your brush comes over it. And if your paints aren't blending the way that you want, get a clean brush and just wet the bristles just slightly and then dry it off really well. And don't add any more paint, but go over the area with your damp brush, and that might help you push that paint around a little bit better. You know, be patient with your background. Your background really is the foundation of everything, and you want to make sure that you take the time to let it develop. And sometimes that means you're going to have to just leave it alone for a few minutes. I'm out of white. I'm going to need some more of that. Remember, you can always hang your painting on the easel so that you can get the bottom. If the top of your painting is dry enough, you can always flip the canvas over and take care of those edges however you see fit. There isn't a whole lot of Going over the side with this painting, at least it's not as far as I can tell. Um, so treat your edges accordingly. You may or may not have room to play with them later, but um, that'll be all up to what you want to do with them in the end. Alright, so I'm going to let that just dry for a few minutes. And while we do that, we're going to prepare for the next step. The next step is actually getting the groundwork for the Dreamcatcher going. It is, like I said, it is not a difficult project, but the idea of very round circles could be daunting for you. It just really kind of depends on how comfortable you are. And I just need to pull up my picture here so that I can know what I'm doing. And that just needs a minute to dry anyway. You don't want to go on to your project without your canvas drying. It will not play nice with you. So, as we've talked about in the past, we like using a little bit of chalk to outline the more challenging part of the project. I certainly do find that to be the circles and the ellipses that are in this project. Now this is putting the Dreamcatcher kind of right in the center. So I'm just gonna do my best to get as round a circle as I can. And that circle is going to come down to just about the halfway point on the painting. It does not have to be perfect. All right, and then we have we're going to kind of just dot the center as our kind of like our staging point. And I'm going to draw little half ellipses. We're going to clean this up later once we're happy with our initial sketch. And if you're hanging your canvas on the lip of your easel, that bump in the back might deviate your hand a little bit. So chalk comes right off. You could even do this with a pencil and it should rinse right off with just a little bit of water. But ideally, we're just going to paint over this anyway. So it's not really going to be that big of a deal. So now that we have our starting point, we're going to go ahead and kind of keep going with the sketch. So then I'm going to take these three ends right here, and I'm just going to kind of mark out where I want the strings to go. And I would say give yourself plenty of room because you're going to bead, these are going to be beaded and then they're going to be feathers on them. So you might want to use nice big feathers or do little ones. It's up to you. You can do multiple strings or you can do just one. It's completely up to your imagination. And this is a good starting point for us. So now I'm just going to take some straight black. I know working with black can be very scary because there is a bit of permanency in working with black. Try not to be intimidated by it, and just, you know, do what you feel is comfortable. So we are wetting the bristles on our this is a round brush, which if you roll it in your paint, it can give you a very fine tip to work with. I have found that the closer you hold to the tip, the more that it feels kind of like a pen. So just do what feels good, and take a break if you feel like it's getting to be too much. Don't let the nerves get the better of you. And what I recommend is just going from tip to tip. So just small strokes. And if you used chalk, that chalk is going to come up with your paint. So wipe your bristles clean a little bit every time you feel like it's getting too much. Just small strokes. You can go back over the circle later. In fact, you can go back and decorate it later and cover up the initial circle process. And this is by all means a rather bumpy circle, but it's a very good starting point. So now that we've got our initial circle done, we can move on to the ellipsis in the middle. Stay hydrated. It's very important. And we're just going to kind of go from the middle and out. Be light-handed with these strokes. That will make the lines smoother and daintier. I'm working on a way for us to be able to have these streamings on multiple platforms at once. So it would be able to be streamed on Facebook and YouTube, but also on an interactive platform like Zoom. So this can be a little bit more like painting with participation rather than me by myself, basically talking to myself. But wouldn't it be kind of neat if, maybe you weren't into the painting, but you know all about Dreamcatchers, so you could share with us all about Dreamcatchers while we all paint? And I am trying to leave a little bit of a notch right in the center of the Dreamcatcher so that I can have an empty center. Because Dreamcatchers are woven, so they usually have a little circle, like an eyelet in the middle. I'm going to take a clean brush with just a little bit of water and clean out the chalk right in the middle. And I'm going to let that dry. As you can see, I've fudged it up just a little bit there. We'll go back and fix that later. Now we're going to take our brush again and go over these little strings. And really, at this point, we are just reserving space for what's to come. Later on, you can change these in lots of different ways. You can change their color. You can put beads on them. Add tons and tons and tons of feathers. You could do away with the strings altogether and just do feathers. I've seen some Dreamcatchers with very, very large feathers, like eagle's feathers, simply attached to the bottom with very little dangle. You can make the look of your Dreamcatcher puffy or very simple. You can make it look wiry. There's all kinds of ways that you can make this painting special and unique. Let's try and like that. So now that we have the basic bones of the painting going, we can go ahead and start dressing it up a little bit. So I still have quite a bit of red, so I'm going to take a little, and I still have a little bit of blue as well, so I'm going to take a little bit more of the white just in case I need it. And I'm going to take just a little touch of yellow because one of my favorite colors to work with is actually teal. You need a little bit of yellow into your blue to create a lovely teal. So take that brush, take a little bit of blue, I realize you can't see my palette. Again, that's another thing that I'll work on, making sure that you can see what I'm doing with the colors. It's just a very, very small amount of yellow into your blue will get you a really rich and beautiful teal. And you can punch that up, or you can tone it down with a little bit of black or a little bit of white, depending on what tone you're actually looking for. I'm just adding just a little bit of white there. And I'm going to start with the top and just kind of add a little. I want the shape of a bead. I'm going to put at the top of each end. I don't know what these are called, so I'm just going to call them petals because they kind of look like flower petals. But if anybody knows, tell me. It's just a little dot, not a ton of paint or effort. We're just touching it on there. That looks nice. And then just for good measure, I'm going to add another couple of them down here where my strings touch each other. If it seems like it's going on a little dark over the black, just leave it there, let it dry, and then come back to it later. When you're doing paint over paint, dry paint will always allow you to go over it much better. So now we have one of the fun parts, and that's going to be the feathers that we want to use. And I've seen all kinds of feathers. The tutorial that I chose has white feathers. So I'm going to do a base white feather that we can later individualize a little bit more. And I'm going to take a brush that has a straight edge on it. It could be a wide brush or a narrow brush. It doesn't really matter. I would recommend that it have a straight edge on it because that's going to allow for your strokes to be a little bit cleaner. It's going to let you push the paint around in a more efficient fashion. And we're just going to take some straight white, and by now your background should be nice and dry. And we want to just kind of mark out the base shape of your feather. So just kind of like a straight down. If you want a short feather, it would be a shorter stroke. And then with that same brush, we're going to just pull the paint out. It doesn't matter if it goes over the side of your painting. And it doesn't matter if your strokes are a little translucent. It's just kind of like a swishing stroke. It starts from the middle and goes out. We'll do the next one. If you want your feathers to be a little bit poofier, just angle your brush out. Let me see what Facebook is letting me do. Hi Gloria, hi Susan, and hi Marty. I am not actually looking at the screen. You know, every now and then I will do my best to try and have a look. Having field day today with our streaming. Not a big deal. Then we move on to the next one. It's just the same. Start in the middle and just pull the paint outward. Well, it looks like we might have actually lost internet connection here at the house. So if I don't hear you for a minute, it's because my actual computer that I'm keeping an eye on is actually not getting any signal for here for a moment, but the stream should be going just the same. Keep going. This one's a little smaller, so and the more loaded your brush gets with paint, the fatter the bristles are going to be. We call it a loaded brush for that very reason. So what you want to do is you want to squish the paint out or clean it off altogether, and that will clean up your brush strokes. All right. And now, since I kind of want to give everything a little bit of a finished edge, I'm going to go ahead and finish up the center of my Dreamcatcher. Then I'm going to clean off my brush a little, my narrow. Make sure it's nice and dry. I'm going to take a little bit of that white and go over my lines a little. Just a little. This is going to make them look a little bit shiny. And again, the purpose is to bring it all together and give us some area to work with should we decide we really want to dress these strands out. If you do just a little touch of gray or silver paint, if you have it, that'll give it a nice metallic touch. There we go.
Hi.
Hi. Alrighty. So now we're going to have another look at our example here. So we're going to let this sit for just a minute, and we're going to go back to our friendly, handy, and dandy piece of chalk that lets us know what we're doing. And I'm going to outline an area for those really pretty flowers that we have up at the top that make me really, really nervous because I have never been good with roses. So we're going to give those another shot today. And I'm just going to kind of reserve some space for that nice big rose up here at the top. Another little bit of space here for a flower. Another here. And then it looks like there's a little bit of foliage sticking out. I do like foliage, so I put a little bit of extra. And then we've got a couple leaves. Again, this is just reserving space. You can use as much of it or as little of it as you please as you go. And while we're still waiting for some of our surfaces to dry, we can play a little bit with the areas that we've already prepared. So I still have a little bit of that pretty teal left over, and I've lightened it up just a tiny bit. And I'm going to go back and lighten up some of those beads just to kind of give them a little bit of contrasting light. And this picture actually has beads all over the place. So I'm going to take a slightly smaller brush. And I'm going to put some more in because I think they're pretty. And you can use just a round brush. You can use something smaller if you'll feel more comfortable with that. Hi Heather, thank you. You can just add another one up here. And as you can see, the paint on my canvas has dried enough to let me paint over it quite comfortably. And not all turquoise is the same color. So if you have different shades of turquoise here and there, that would be quite appropriate. And I know they look like little dots right now, but we're going to go back and give them some more dimension to really punch up the colors. And you can have as few or as many as you would like. Anybody have anybody in the middle? And they can all be the same color, or they can be several different colors. It, just like your dreams, are entirely up to you. So I'm just going to take some blue, just some plain blue, and I'm not going to clean off my brush or anything. I'm just going to dip my brush that already has a little bit of turquoise on it, and I'm going to dab it in there in the blue, and it's going to give me kind of a lapis color. I'm going to give some of my beads a little kiss of that. Then you can actually just take some straight blue and dot little beads wherever you want to put them. kind of like lighting and shading. This is what's giving your beads shape and dimension and making them look like object rather than just a little blob that happens to be there. Like with all of the other steps, take your time. Make sure that it feels good. If something is not working the way you feel like it should, just kind of leave it alone for a little while and come back to it later. You can always paint over dry paint if it in fact decides it wants to defy you. Alright, and because we have bunches of blues and stuff in there, I want to add a little bit of red and some pink because those are my colors, they're my go-tos. I still have some red from before, so I'm just going to take a little bit of that and just lighten it up a little bit. Not a ton, because I'm not really after pink. I just don't want bloody red on there. Just a little bead here and there. To punch up the colors. And then I do want to punch those colors up too. So I'm just actually going to take just some straight white onto my already tinted brush. It's going to give me kind of a muddled pink, but you know, that's kind of what we're after. It's just a little contrast. And I'm sure that we will do this painting again because the quality on this video is going to be terrible. It might be a good experiment for when we're able to do the multi-platform streaming. So I'm working myself up to this part, and I'm going to start prepping the area for my flowers. I'm going to take my large brush and make sure that it's nice and clean. You can do that, or you can use a new brush altogether if that's what you want to do. going to take, it doesn't matter if your white is tinted with other stuff, it doesn't matter. Really what we're going to do is we're just going to prime an area. And I'm going to prime off the main area for that big rose with some white. Hello, Marta. Hi, Teresa. Miss you. I hope you had a healthy dinner. And then I'm going to just do the same thing for the leaves. We're priming off the area really for the big ticket items. And we're not like tapering off the entire area that we want to use. We just want to kind of mark off the area so that the colors behind it don't try to mess with the flowers. And it's very important that it dries before we go into it. Some, you know, it might not make that much of a difference, but I've always found that priming the area lets the colors pop a whole lot nicer. I did not know that, Kimberly. I was just saying earlier this evening, wouldn't it be kind of nice that, you know, if we could do this like on a Zoom platform where somebody, you know, that maybe isn't interested in the painting but has knowledge of the subject could like talk to us about the Dreamcatchers while we create it. Wouldn't that be kind of neat? So we're going to let that dry. We're going to take the brush that we had been using for the feathers, and I'm going to, well, before we do that, I'm going to make myself a little bit of very light purple. And I'm going to do that by mixing just touches of red and touches of blue in with a blob of white. And I don't necessarily want just purple, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I'm a big fan of color streaking. And we're just going to play with that. And I want to tint my feathers. Thank you, ladies. I am very much enjoying this painting, even though the overall experience of the streaming has been tainted by several technical difficulties this evening. But I am enjoying the actual painting itself. So I'm taking just a little bit of, you know, it's white tinted with red and pink. And I'm going to go over my feathers a little bit. And I'm just staining them a little, if you will. Because I want them to be, I want them to have a dreamy life of their own. We're going to go back and do that with some blue here in just a minute. And I'm not really painting over. I'm actually aiming for areas that didn't get a lot of paint, so the areas that are a little bit more translucent. Because I don't want to lose sight of the fact that these feathers are in fact white at their base. And we're going to do the same thing with just a little bit of light blue. And I don't want to do a whole lot because I don't want it to blend into the background either. little subtleties can make a huge difference, and it can personalize any project. And I want to take a moment to thank my best friend Daryl, who did his very, very best to help me out tonight. And my technical difficulties were so overwhelming on my end that I actually wasn't able to make use of his great help. Certainly, it has been so much harder without you, Daryl. Thank you for trying to help me out. Just the technical difficulties. We're gonna have some work to do, I think. Now I'm just gonna go back in there with some straight white and reaffirm the spine of the feather. And then, well, we're going to let that dry, but then we're going to go back and seriously reaffirm the spine on that feather. Want to make sure that, that it actually looks the way that it's supposed to. So, I'm not entirely sure how to work this part of the painting, so I'm just kind of flying off the seat of my pants here. I am a big fan of roses. I love roses. I'm really scared about painting this one, so I'm going to do my best. I figure go big or go home. So I'm going to go for a hot pink rose here, just by tint. In this case, I'm taking a big pile of red and adding small bits of white to it until I get more or less the colors that I want to be working with. So let's just kind of see how it goes. Now, most of the tutorials that I've seen for roses have you starting from the inside out. And I've always found that they were easy to work with from the outside in. So I'm going to go with my gut. And I'm going to take my large brush and just start creating petals a little bit separated, and then I'm going to give them some time to dry, and then I'll go back and redefine. And that will be the starting point for that. While that's getting nice and dry, we're going to work on the foliage a little bit. Foliage is actually super easy, and depending on what you like, it can also be a lot of fun. I'm just going to make some green. If you have pre-made green already in your kits, by all means, feel free. I like making my own green because it's nice and spotty and variegated. And we're just going to start with our leaves. You just give them shape. Because we will be going back in to do the details once our starting point is nice and dry. And it doesn't matter if you kind of go into the area of the flowers. The flowers are actually going to overlap the foliage. So don't worry about it too much. these lines here to be as slim and dainty as possible, because that'll give me some room to play with what they are once I've made a decision on it. And while that's drying, I'm going to take my smaller brush and I'm going to define the edge of that rose a bit. I don't want all of the petals to just kind of meld into each other, so definition is going to be important as we go along. Again, stay hydrated, super important. And while that's going, I like the idea of a little bit of an orange flower next to those roses. So we're going to work on those a little bit. Now, this is when you start getting into the weeds of your color wheel. Once you start working with large amounts of yellow, you have the potential of creating browns by accident. So just kind of mind your hand and try not to get it mixed into your other colors if you can avoid it. My rule of thumb usually actually is also to just have an extra clean brush available for the stuff that I don't want touching the other stuff. We've got a nice little peachy orange here. And I'm just gonna that green's got a fair amount of blue in it, so make sure that it's either nice and dry or that your hand is very careful not to drag in any of the blue into it. It's not too bad. Move this forward so I can see what I'm doing. Right. So now that that is working on itself, we're going to go back to the dreaded rose. And I think I'm going to go with lighter shades as I work towards the inner side of the rose. So I'm going to add a little bit more white to my plate and lighten up my working colors a little bit more. I think that's going to give us some contrast to play with. And again, we're going to let that dry so that we can get some definition in there before we start really messing with it. And so while that's drying, we're going to take a little bit of the purple that we've had laying around. Honestly, by now, if you're anything like me, your palette looks like a bunch of chaos, which is not a bad thing. It means that you are having a really good time making a mess. And the reason I want some purple, just because purple seems like a good shade color. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to trace lightly along that white spine of the feather on just one side. My purpose is to just kind of give it some contrast and some power in its own shape. I'm not getting rid of the white. I am trying to make it pop. And it doesn't require a whole lot of shading to do that. And if you want, you can let that blend into your feathers a bit as well. Right. So now we're going to go back and work on those little orange flowers again. And in the ones that are kind of, the petals are kind of like in the green, I'm going to go over them just a little bit more just to make sure that we're definitely not green. I don't know what Chris is doing upstairs, but he's having a good time. So I'm going to take my brush again with a straight edge and yellow up that green that I was working with earlier for my foliage. And we're going to give my foliage some detail and some light. You don't need a lot of paint or effort, just a little bit of love. I'm going to go back and define that a little bit more later as well. These tendrils are just catching a little bit of light. There we go. So now we're going back to the dreaded rose. I'm actually going to undergraduate to a smaller round tip brush if I can find one. And now we're down to a rather light pink. And just like before, we're just gonna create little petals that we're gonna go back and mark out a little bit better later. There we go. So the basis of our rose is completed. We will go back and we will detail the center a little bit more here in a minute, but I'm kind of happy with it. I'm not going to jinx it, but I'm a little bit happy with it. So let's see how it goes. But while that dries, we'll go ahead and work on our other flowers a little bit more. So find the right brush here. So now that that orange is a little bit more dry, we can take actually some of the reds and pinks that we've been working with and really kind of pull it together. There we go. We'll go back and separate those leaves a little bit more. We're on the home stretch of finishing this painting up, and it's turning out very nicely. So while that's getting all nifty, I'm gonna make a little bit more green, only this time I am going to darken it up. And the point of darkening up a green really only ever is so that you can define a green within a green. So I made my green like I usually would, mixing some yellow with some blue. And then I tinted it with just a hint of black. You don't want a whole lot because it will just all turn black. But I want to give these leaves some separation. Thank you, Kimberly. I'm kind of liking how they're coming out myself. And then we're going to just take some straight yellow. And when you're going from a dark to a light, you really do want to have a nice clean brush to work with, because you don't want those colors to just become some blobby gray color. I'm just going to take some straight yellow, and I'm going to give, where I gave shadow before, I'm going to put light in the opposite side. Okay. So now we are going to finish up these flowers, and it should be relatively simple. So now we actually do want a little bit of that brown. So you can take any heap of anything that you have. If you have some orange left over, you can put in a touch of blue. It'll eventually turn brown. It doesn't have to be brown. Really what we want is just a nice dark contrasting color for the center of our flowers. Be right there. And I'm going to use some very, very careful strokes to really separate the flower petals. We don't want a lot of that brown. That brown can really, really suck the life out of a painting in a hurry. So now just gonna come up here and define the edge of my roses. And I'm not going to use brown for the center of it. I'm going to make just a little bit of purple, like a lavender purple, and just kind of impose it in the middle. There we go. I am going to take a little bit of these pinks and reds that we have left over and finish off the other flowers. And then I want a little bit of darkness, so very carefully create yourself a little bit of a dark blue. Well, maybe not dark blue, but mix that into all of your other contrasting purples and everything. Just a little bit more blue. And just outline these little orange things. Just so that they're not blending. Oop, a little bit too much on that one. And just like that, we have completed the Dreamcatcher painting. I apologize for all of the patience you guys have had with me today with all of the technical difficulties. I promise to work the kinks out a little bit better next time. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your patience. Here, let me thank you. Thank you properly. Thank you for joining me. I love you so much. I'm really, really sorry for all of the technical difficulties, but I did have a really, really fun time with this painting. I hope the next go around will be a lot smoother. Everybody have a good night. Take care of yourselves, and I love you. Bye.